thank you to Liz, Sylvia, and Malika for your powerful testimony. What you have done today is freeing the women who haven't come forward because they hear you. They hear your power. They see your power, and you're shining. Thank you. I want to know from each one of you what you think that the federal government should do to stop this heinous practice.
Who would like to go first? Sylvia, would you like to go first? Yes, witness A, the floor is yours.
In my opinion, I would like to see legislative change, policy reform to ensure that these kinds of human rights violations, they end, that it leaves no question for any Indigenous woman or any woman to be coercively sterilized, that as a consequence, that it be criminalized. I think that with consequences, that it won't happen as much, I hope.
Thank you, Malika. Sylvia or Liz?
I also think the same thing, that they need to be held accountable. So like criminalization, changing policies.
Thank you. Do you have anything else to add, Liz? Liz,
I also think that the federal government and the provinces should address this matter for the seriousness that it requires. So far, there's been ongoing delays, a lot of stonewalling, it seems, and they don't maybe realize or understand there's their lives hanging in the balance. And for some people, waking up every day is a struggle. You know, I'd appreciate it if our prime minister and our premiers were able to address this matter as a leader should.
Thank you, Malika. Liz, did you have anything you wanted to add? You're muted.
Yes. The question was, what steps do you think the federal government should take to prevent future incidents of forced and coerced sterilization? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. I think that there shouldn't be future incidents and that it must stop now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also, having said that this is the first step in seeing the gathering of the senators and the survivors, the women, and the and the families of the women. I think that's a major big step in the right direction. But really, there shouldn't be any more.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank you, Morningstar, Witness B, and Nicole for your testimony today. By you coming forward, it frees other women that are listening. It will allow them to come forward too. One day this will be stopped. I want to pick up on something that Nicole had mentioned about the generations that have been affected, not just affected, but sterilized. Your mother, your aunties, your in-laws. How widespread has this been in each one of your communities? Nicole, are there others in your community that have been sterilized? And how far back does this go? And is it still happening?
Speaking with my mother, she speaks of a lot of families on the Blood Tribe Reserve, and she mentions names, and I'm not mentioning names, and she says how they were forced to have their tubes tied. And basically, after one or two children, they, it was a family breakdown. And I know a whole family who turn like towards pills. And, just looking at the intergenerational trauma that these women had to deal with, their mental health and depression, and nobody really asking the question if they were okay. And then the children that they did have, their mother was like on pills, and their children and their grandchildren were affected, and some turned to alcohol, depression. My mom, this also happened to my mom when she had me. This was in 1973. And, I know it hurts her now when she talks about it, because I didn't know this until I brought her with me to go see Alyssa. And that's when she told me, this happened to me. And I'm just like, what? So had I not brought her to my meeting with me as a support, I wouldn't know that this happened to her. And just kind of going back regarding residential school, I never knew anything about residential school until I was in university. And that's when I started asking questions, and I started hearing the stories and everything like that. And this is something that people don't talk about. And I think people need to be aware that they, just like the missing and murdered Indigenous and the residential school survivors and the children that didn't come home. This is one of those things that need to be discussed, and people need to know what happened and what continues to still happen to us. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm wondering about Witness B and Morning Star and how widespread this has been in your own communities.
You have to unmute yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. I can honestly say that when I brought this to the attention of Chief Alan Adam of Athabasca Chippewa First Nation, I'm a Treaty 8 territory, he wasn't able to respond to me until he felt he had enough time to give it some thought. After which he did contact me, quite shook up, frankly in a bit of shock, because he was able to reflect on many members within our community who were unable to have children. That generation specifically, well, it seems with this generation, it's the healthcare system, period, point blank, in 2022. Previously, it was also Charles Camsville Indian Hospital in Alberta. Prior to that, experimentation of children in residential schools. Suffice to say, there are many community members that he is aware of that were unable to have children. Of course, he didn't provide any names, and nor should have he. So yes, and to sum it up, within my community, to my knowledge, there are people, women, and men, because it wasn't just women, specifically women though, Indigenous, Métis, and within my community. And I have to make reference to the Inuit as well as women of color. Specifically to my community though, definitely Indigenous, Métis women that were unable to have children. And again, I reiterate my aunt who was in the Charles Camsell Hospital was unable to have children, and my uncle was unable to have children. Both were in Charles Camsell Indian Hospital.
Thank you, Morningstar. Witness B.
Certainly, I'm not aware of many women that have had to or have been forcibly sterilized. But what I can say is that when this has come to my attention, working up north, I'm finding that there are a lot of women that are having their tubes tied without knowing that it's permanent. And I've been making a concerted effort to educate the women about their reproductive rights. And it's awful that these women, they have no idea. So it's happening today. And we need to figure out actual solutions.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just to add, like for my mother, we don't know if her tubes were tied, but I'm pretty sure she was given a hysterectomy at that time. So that really, affected her and affected her mental health after that. And so going like for the First Nations, when this issue was brought up, I was thinking that they were targeting First Nations women or Aboriginal women just in Saskatchewan. But it wasn't till, I discussed it with my mom to find out that it was happening on our First Nation on the Blood Tribe Reserve in the local hospitals in Fort McLeod.